Iraqi government forces have begun their attack on the western part of the city of Mosul.
Yesterday, they managed to recapture Mosul airport as part of the government's offensive to drive so-called Islamic State from Iraq's second city.
Our correspondent Quentin Somerville is the only foreign journalist with the Iraqi troops. He captured the intense fighting as it took place, as we can see from this footage.
This is the main road into the airport of Mosul. Huge gun battle going on at the moment. Some people still in that sugar factory. But also, this concrete tunnel stopped when a huge roadside bomb exploded to the side there.
Mosul airport may be in ruins, but more importantly, it's back in government hands. Over there, it's the Iraqi flag that's flying on the airfield again. This is a landmark moment. Iraqi forces now have the Islamic State group on the run. IS might transform itself into something else, but right now here in Iraq, we are witnessing the final days of the caliphate. Quentin Somerville, BBC News, Mosul Airport.
Well, joining us now in the studio is Dr. Afshin Shahi, who's a senior lecturer in international relations and Middle East politics at the University of Bradford. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Looking at Quentin Somerville's piece there, clearly dramatic scenes again there. What's your thoughts on the latest development?
I mean, as you know, the operation to liberate Mosul, in fact, started last October. And it took them until about January to only liberate the eastern side. But when you think about it, over the last 2.5 years, ISIS has dedicated most of its defense preparation to the western side. So if basically liberating the eastern side proved to be that problematic and that difficult, probably the western side is going to be even more complex and probably it's going to take a very, very long time.
Yes, indeed. Quentin Somerville, I think, tweeted last night as he was covering the ongoing situation that the next step was going to be the hardest by some scale of difference. What is the significance of Mosul to ISIS?
Mosul obviously is the largest urban center that they are controlling at the moment. Over the last 15 months, they have lost 60% of their territories that they controlled in 2014 in Iraq and over 30% of their territories in Syria. They have lost a lot of important urban centers in the country, and Mosul is the very last one. And you have to remember that already, as we speak, over almost 700,000 people living there. So it has a lot of a strategic and symbolic significance for the organization. And if they lose it, obviously it's going to be a game changer. But that doesn't mean they're going to be irrelevant. I mean, even if they lose territory, the conditions, the factors, the kind of the causal structures that made their emergence possible 4 years ago are still in place. So even if they lose territory, unfortunately, they're still going to pose a major threat to the security of the country and the region as a whole.
And as we're looking at the military hardware, the helicopters there, what about the civilian population that are still within the areas that are held by so-called Islamic State?
I mean, as I mentioned, I mean, we don't exactly know how many people are living there, but a lot of international organizations assuming that up to 700,000 people are still living in the city. And as ISIS has proved over the last 2 or 3 years, they are absolutely capable of using kind of human shelters. And this is actually the main complexity, because majority of the people are still living in the western side. The western side is very difficult to kind of operate in. And over the last 2 years, they have dedicated most of their defense preparation to this specific part of the city. So obviously, the implications for the civilian lives is going to be very, very profound and problematic.
So what do you think this all means then for the strength of ISIS at the moment?
I mean, ISIS, I mean, if you're talking about their kind of financial position, they are under a great deal of pressure. In their peak, in about 2014, their kind of annual income was something close to $1.9 billion a year. It has dropped to about, I don't know, 100 million. So financially, they're not as strong as what they used to be in 2014. Nonetheless, they are still the richest terrorist organization in the world. And you have to remember some of the atrocities that they conducted in Europe, like the attack in Paris and Nice, they did not require that much of money. It didn't cost them much. So the very fact that they are financially under pressure and the very fact that they're losing territory is not going to make them irrelevant on the ground. And I think as they're going to lose more and more territory, they may resort to more problematic tactics and methods that Al-Qaeda has been using over the last 10 years. So potentially they can actually constitute a greater security threat, not only to the Middle East, but also to Europe.
Dr. Shahi, thank you very much. Dr. Shahi is lecturer in Middle East politics at the University of Bradford. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just coming up to 7:27. Time now to find out what's happening with the news, travel and weather where you are this morning.
Good morning. From BBC London News, I'm Sonia Jessup.